Thank you. And I'll keep my remarks quite brief because I'm suffering from man flu, which, as we all know, is lethal for some people. Sort of thing would have seen Tom Tugendhat in bed for a month. But anyway, so where are we? I mean, we are in deeply challenging times. I think, particularly in politics. And I come from this, not from some sort of heritage in politics. I was never involved before 2015. But it's pretty clear to me that we did have a very positive, forward-looking agenda. If we're going to win in places like Plymouth, which have never voted for the Conservatives before, we do have to look at things like that and ask where were we going right, where have we slightly lost our way, and how do we get it back, and what's the vision for the future. I think we had a very strong narrative around jobs, around life chances, around local economies, around putting power back in the hands of local people. If you look at the data, and clearly all of our policies need to be evidence-based, it's no good, having come to London, I see it still goes on. It is no good sitting in London, coming up with policy ideas, sitting around in think tanks of like-minded peers and coming up with policies that we think are going to work. We have to get out there on the doors and start answering people's questions in their lives. If we look at what has fundamentally changed in places like Plymouth and Mansfield, the single biggest factor in some of our most deprived communities, in keeping families together, in advancing economies like Plymouth, is having a job. Now, I'm not going to pretend Cameron and Osborne did everything right, but under the last government, you saw unemployment fall in Plymouth by 52%. It's not perfect. There's too many jobs there that aren't paying enough. But that signals a direction of travel and a vision, if you like, that we can get behind. Clearly, there are a lot of things that we need to do better in order to continue that message. But at the moment, I do feel that we are slightly struggling with a message and with a vision. I go out on the doors every weekend, which you have to in a seat like mine. And, whilst people are not going to agree to everything, people understand that we're in very difficult times. I think, one of the reasons I came into politics is because I think for a long time we've treated people who vote for us like they're stupid and they don't really understand. People do understand we're going through a difficult time, but people want us to come up with the answers. There was no point pontificating in London about the nuances of policy details that ultimately a lot of people on the doors aren't going to have much of an interest in, and fail to answer the generational challenges of our time, one of which has been touched on already, which is healthcare. How on earth do you continue to pay for free healthcare, to fund a healthcare service that is free at the point of need for those who need it, with ever-increasing age expectations, medical expectations, public expectations on a public service? Those are the sorts of things that people are looking for us to do. I think the future of the party is very much a modern, compassionate Conservative party. I don't think, these conservative values that have done so well, I mean, wealth creation has got a bit of a bad name, but ultimately that is what drives the economy. That is what gives people the jobs and gives people the life chances and improves life chances of people in places like Plymouth. I don't think, clearly people are tired of austerity, and absolutely I get that, but we can't run away from it pretending, we didn't think it was a good idea in the first place. Things like, it's about articulating the message. If we look at things like the public sector pay gap, which publicly is toxic, but actually if you get out there and you try and advocate and you win the argument, 200,000 jobs, it's been estimated that is saved in the public sector. 30% of the jobs in Plymouth are public sector wages. Okay, that is food, that is wages on the table, that is families looked after. And this Conservative government did that. Yet we are very quick to sort of denounce the policies of the past and somehow not understand our character or where we're going or what we actually believe in. And I think those are the key issues. Why do people keep chirping up about Brexit? And the Sunday papers are pretty torrid reading every weekend. I think because people don't feel there is that vision, that kind of bringing people with you. This is, yes, the end state's difficult. It's a difficult place to get to, but actually if you stick with me and, and this is my vision and this is what we believe in, people will come. Now, I think the Prime Minister has that. I have spent personal time with the Prime Minister, and she has a vision. She does believe in stuff. But in order to get that across, you need to bring people with you. You need to have people around you who are going to bring people with you. Ultimately, politics is a team effort. None of us are, believe it or not, are here for ourselves. We're here because we want to be part of something that is greater than ourselves, that is answering the fundamental challenges of our time. We can do that with good leadership, with good vision, with a programme that people are going to vote for, because I don't think this is a hard left country. I don't think it's a hard right country. It's somewhere in the middle. People are reasonable, decent. I understand the British character, I feel. And, you know, if we're winning in places like Plymouth and other places, we are giving people something to vote for. And that's what it comes down to in this game. It's about going out there, knocking on doors, and giving people something to vote for so you can come back to London, change lives and make people's lives better through what you do. So I think I'll keep my remarks there. But well, clearly I think there's a lot that makes sense of what we've heard. But I do think we need to slightly get away from this idea that a group of us as sort of enlightened individuals in London think about policy and think about what's best for the country. I do think that the way this nation works best is when we give people something to vote for and what they want. And I know it sounds desperately transactional, but ultimately that is what democracy is about and what we've seen in this Brexit referendum. You know, and if you go, if you are out on doors and you think about what do people actually want from government, for some people government is huge. They use the NHS all the time. They're high frequency users of the NHS. Housing, they're on social security, and the tiny things that we talk about over in Westminster around tax credits, taper rates that a lot of people won't know anything about. These are really big things in these guys' lives. And I think if as a government, you know, you can be big or small or whatever, but if you go out and you give people something to vote for and you have a vision and you can bring people with you on that, people will come out and vote for you. Not everybody is going to agree on every you know, monetary policy or whatever it may be that that is looking to drive economic growth, but they expect government to do the basics well. And if you do that, and as Conservatives, that is one of our major selling points that we're in danger of losing. If we get the competence right, then we can continue to branch out into the other more exciting things, like how do you drive economic policy in you know, the Northern Powerhouse and the Southwest and things like that. But you have to get the basics right. And the thing around public servants and public services at the moment, you know, I feel very uncomfortable when I come and do these emergency shifts and go back to my old job in the military and so on. These are sort of our people. They are patriots. They do a job for less than they could be paid elsewhere because they believe in what they're doing and they believe in the mission. They believe in the vision of a modern Britain. But at the moment, they do not feel comfortable in the Conservative Party, and for me, that is a fundamental error. How long has the Prime Minister got? Look, I am of the view that any sort of change of leadership is not helpful at the moment, and I don't support that. But I do think the window is closing, because politics can be quite a brutal game. And if you don't answer the questions that people want us to answer, look at defence at the moment and the proposals that came forward for that, which were politically toxic. And now we are starting to change and meet those questions. I think around the NHS housing has been touched on. You know, the Prime Minister talks about things that are brilliant, you know, around intergenerational unfairness. We've touched upon, as we've said, housing and so on. But we have to deliver them. You can't just always talk about the speech outside number 10 Downing Street, which was very, very good. You have to bridge the gap between that and how it feels if you're suffering from mental health problems in places like Plymouth. What is that parity of esteem that the government always talks about? How does that feel if you are a mental health sufferer in Plymouth? How does it feel if you are a veteran? How does it feel if you are trying to get on the housing ladder? And until we stop judging ourselves by how much we're putting in one end of the machine and doing a great job in London and more money's going in to how it actually feels for the people who vote for us, then we're never going to mark our homework correctly. And I think, yes, we are in danger of Jeremy Corbyn becoming Prime Minister, because people, you know, clearly on my side of the fence, I think that would be a catastrophe. And he will never be able to deliver a third, you know, or a tenth of what he said he's going to. However, he's kind of saying that, and people are thinking, well, you guys are saying it, but you're not doing it, so I'll give someone else a go. And if we don't do that and seize the sort of middle ground and come out with policies that meet these challenges, you know, politics, people are always going to vote. I mean, Trump got in the States. I mean, if you'd have looked at that 3-4 years ago, a lot of reasons why he didn't get in, why he did get in, but ultimately people didn't feel they could go and vote for something that Hillary offered. And we're going to be in danger of the same thing. I think 10 years ago, if you'd have said Donald Trump's going to be President of the United States, everyone would have laughed. You know, 3-4 years ago, if you said Jeremy Corbyn was going to be Prime Minister, people would have laughed. I can't see it happening, but I can absolutely see a way that we can ensure it doesn't. Right. So the one thing we do badly in this country, do very badly, and I've gone from the military where everyone thinks you're great, irrespective of what you do, which is not the case in my case, to being instantly vilified for being a politician. But the thing we miss is how quality of life, life chances, education, the NHS is all continuing to improve, and we've kind of lost that skill and that gift of advocating for what we believe in, and that's why people are getting fed up. And Tom is absolutely right when he talks about cancer treatments being today better than they were 12 months ago, and because we have a sort of cohort of politicians who are instantly on the defensive, ready to hit back with facts and figures. Rather than having a cohort of politicians who are actually going to stand up and tell it like it is. Actually, you can moan about the NHS, but you are still going to get a world-class health service if you go and see it. Life standards and life chances in this country continue to go up in some of our most deprived areas. And until we advocate for the positives, whilst accepting that we have serious work to do in some areas, then people are going to get fed up. Less and less people will vote, and you'll end up with someone who is out of keeping with the character of the country, like Jeremy Corbyn or Donald Trump. I think Nick raised a really interesting point around taxes and how we become slightly more sort of intellectual on how we raise. We look at brilliant policies like raising the threshold of income tax, but that obviously applies to everybody who earns that money. And actually, if we could really focus those tax breaks into the pockets of our poorest constituents, I think it would do a lot to change the message around the Conservative Party at the moment. I think that young people, clearly one of the most worrying things of the last election, yes, of course, was students not voting for us, but actually it's that professional group slightly above that age of my sort of age, my sort of situation with a family and so on. Hardly any of them voted for us, and for me that was the most worrying thing of the last election. Why didn't they vote for us? I think they are slightly, we are slightly before the generation of whether you're sort of tribal, conservative, Labour or Lib Dem or whatever it may be. Actually, you will look at who is going to deliver policies that make your life better. I think, around young people, yes, clearly we need to do things better around like social media and so on. There isn't a golden bullet on it, but we need to answer fundamental questions and give people something to vote for. If they see the narrative around housing, the NHS, public services continuing to nosedive, they won't come and vote for us. I think there's a line though, and we absolutely must not try and sort of out Corbyn. So, for example, in my view, this proposal about student fees, lowering them from £9,000 to £6,000, in my view, that is a complete waste of money, because if you're a student, you're still going to go and vote for Jeremy Corbyn because he, just on the off chance that he might be able to wipe all your debt. So we should focus on what is the message, what is the vision of this country, and put that money into that, so that we can stand there in 2021, 2022, whenever it is, and say this is what you got from a Conservative government over the last 5 years.